morning. I am David Ross, the town moderator, and I call this 235th recorded meeting of the Town and School District of Grafton to order. Now, I ask that all those who are able to please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, which will be led by Caitlin Archambault and Abriella Halleck.
I
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Caitlin and Abriella will also be assisting with the microphones during the meeting, for which I am very appreciative. And now, may we have a moment of silence to remember those who are no longer with us. Before we begin, I wish to thank our town clerk, Kim Record, and her staff, Wendy Martin, assistant clerk, who will be taking the minutes, select board administrative assistant Bill Kearns, town constable Walt Critchfield, the board of civil authority for counting votes today, Principal Dorr and the school staff for their support, and of course the school board and the select boards for bringing forward the articles today. Among the printed materials on a table at the back of the room is information pertaining to Articles 13 and 14, which inadvertently were warned with incorrect dollar amounts. That would be these colored pages that are there. We will be dealing with those when those articles come up. Also, I'd like to point out in the town report, which I hope everybody has to refer to during the meeting, that the contact telephone number for our health officer, Sir Jay Carpin, they are listed incorrectly, and his number is actually 802-451-0007. The Grafton Grange will once again be offering their traditional lunch with a donation, I think it's $5, and takeaway meals will be available. I'm privileged to serve as your moderator, and my role is to help you accomplish the business before you today. If at any point you feel that you don't understand what's happening, raise your hand. This would technically be known as a point of order and includes whether me as moderator is ruling correctly on a matter. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the laws of the state of Vermont and Robert's Rules of Order in its latest edition. The body can overrule Robert's rules and the moderator, but it cannot overrule state law. Only registered voters will be allowed to speak unless the body acts to suspend the rules, in which case a person may speak but not vote. Will those who are not registered to vote in Grafton please rise? Okay, thank you. Town meeting in Grafton is an old tradition going back to at least 1783 and allows us to discuss the pros and cons of the issues before us and reach what we believe to be the best possible decisions for the town. While we may have strong opinions, it is important to be respectful to one another. Raise your hand and wait to be recognized, and then stand and wait for Caitlin or Abriella to pass you the microphone. Once you have the microphone, state your name for the record. You'll need to hold the microphone fairly close to your mouth and speak clearly. I'm reluctant to ask for a time limit, but if there is no objection, I ask speakers to keep their remarks within 5 minutes. A person may speak once on an article and a second time after all others have spoken. The reading of short quotes is allowable, but any lengthy reading requires special action by the body. Again, be respectful of one another and address comments to the moderator and not to others by name. Are there any questions before we begin? Edward?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Wait a minute. Can we...
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to ensure that everyone has also picked up a copy of the Grafton Town School District Report, because all financial information related to the school is contained in that this year as opposed to being contained in the town report.
Great. Thank you for pointing that out. These are also on the table at the rear of the room. And this is what it looks like, and so you'll have this to refer to the articles, which are coming up fairly soon on our agenda. Thank you, Edward. Okay, if there are no objections, we will dispense with reading the entire warning at this time and take up each article individually. Hearing no objection, we shall begin with Article 1, which is to choose all town and school district officers, voting to be by Australian ballot, polls open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Is there a motion?
Second.
Stan Mack, and a second. Alan Sands. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, then we'll proceed to a vote on the motion, which is to choose all town and school district officers, voting to be by Australian ballot, polls open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The article is passed. Article 2, to act on the auditor's report. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Is there a second? Joe, want to? Okay, the article to act on the auditor's report has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Then we will vote on the article to act on the auditor's report. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Article 3. To authorize the selectmen, the town school directors, and the Athens Grafton Joint Contract School District directors to borrow money, respectively, if necessary, for current expenses in anticipation of collection of taxes. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Did you get those? The motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing that there is none, we shall proceed to vote on the motion, which is to authorize the selectmen, the town school directors, and the Athens Grafton Joint Contract School District directors to borrow money respectively, if necessary, for current expenses in anticipation of collection of taxes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Now, Article 4. And this requires, will require a hand vote when we get to that point, in that we have to have an exact account And that has to be then tallied with the count from the Athens voters before the final determination of this motion is known. So Article 4 is, shall the voters of the Grafton Town School District approve the Athens-Grafton Joint Contract School District budget K through 6 expenses of $1,355,883.98. That includes $500 compensation for each school director. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Edward Bank, is there a second?
Second.
Got it.
The motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Edward Bank? Caitlin will bring you a mic. And you're welcome to use this lectern up here if you'd like, Ed. Yeah, it'd be easier than fumbling with that.
Everyone should have a copy of the Grafton Town School District booklet, which denotes the expenses. I would like to direct everyone's attention to page 32, which is the summation of the proposed expenditure report. If we look at the grand total to be voted on upon the by the taxpayers, the $1,355,883.98, we see that this is an increase of only $8,720 from last year. So basically that means across this budget that we have kept expenses flat for this upcoming year. There are, for all intents and purposes, no increases at all. This article represents the cost of running this particular school that is shared jointly by Athens and Grafton. So again, that's the reason for the dual vote that's being voted on by both towns relative to running this particular school, our grades pre-K through 6th.
Thank you. Any further comments? Questions? Okay, then we'll proceed to a vote. I wonder if I can have members of the Board of Civil Authority come forward, because we will need to count hands on this. Thank you. The article that we're going to vote on is Article 4. Shall the voters of the Grafton Town School District approve the Athens-Grafton Joint Contract School District budget K through 6 expenses of $1,355,883.98. That includes $500 compensation for each school director. Would all those in favor please raise their hand and hold them up till we can get a count.
You can't just say 30. 30 what? 30. 30. You can speak louder than that. It's not, we're not charts. How many?
30 eyes.
30 what? That's weird.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Would those opposed now please raise their hands? Okay, thank you. I can announce the results here, but as I said, this has to be added to the voters from Athens. So there were 60 in favor, none opposed. That's because Ed isn't at the meeting, I guess. He always voted no. And I was thinking about offering 2 cents to the school board to round that off, but I didn't think it would be appropriate before the voting had occurred. Okay, moving on with the school portion of the meeting, Article 5 is, shall the voters of the Grafton Town School District approve the school board to expend $1,003,669.00 which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $16,021.90 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 19.40% higher than spending for the current year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Edward Bank, and a second? John Turner. Is there any discussion? Edward Bank.
Okay, this is where things get complicated. If you have your books, again, I would say let's turn to page 13 and 14. Page 13 will be the proposed expenditure budget, and page 14 is the tax implications thereof. What you will notice as
Excuse
we
me,
go...
this would be in the school report.
This is in the school
correct?
report. In the school report, I'll be on page 13. If we look at our proposed expenditure budget, our first and our budget difference line, which is really what we should be looking at, the furthest column over, we see initially that our small schools grant, the budget is greater, but on the other hand, that one is totally offset by the revenue. So that just matches the revenues that we're going to be receiving this year as our portion of the small schools grant. We'll be receiving approximately $11,000 more. The next part is where we start to see the deviation from the previous year's budget, and that's in our tuitioning of grades 7th and 8th. As this town has expressed that it really wants to continue with this, that means that we have different numbers of students, as we all know, coming through our school and therefore become part of our tuitioning as we move forward. This year we're hitting the sort of apex, if we will, of the mountain of students that have been coming through, and there was an additional $60,000 this year in tuitioning over with the tuitioning that we had last year. Additionally, what we'll see moving down to line 3 is our contract assessment. This contract assessment is our portion of that number that we just voted on previously, i.e. the cost of running this particular school. That assessment is based upon the proportion of students, Athens to Grafton. In this particular year, it has changed to the effect that there are more Grafton students in the school than there are Athens school students, and therefore we have to pick up a larger percentage of that cost. Our next big item then, of course, is in special education, which is an excess cost in 7th and 8th. This is commensurate with the fact that we have more tuition students that we have to take care of, and special education costs, our portion of special education costs rise commensurately. So we are basically at about $125,000 this year on the Grafton portion of running the school and paying for our tuition students than we were last year, and you can obviously see that the bulk of that is in our tuition and the change in the assessment. That's $100,000 of that. If we move over then to page 14, what we'll also see are some things that work out a little bit differently than in previous years. If we go to line 15, we'll note that our equalized pupils are down from last year. So the number of equalized pupils, that's our pre-K through 8th grade students weighted by a formula the state uses, has actually dropped slightly. That combined with the fact that our education spending is up $125,000 results in a large increase in the amount of education spending per equalized student. Now, we're still significantly below the state threshold, which is $17,816, so there are no penalties associated with that. As this all flows down to our taxes, what we can actually see on line 33, which is the rate prior to our bringing in the high school right now, that we are at a significant increase here. We're at a almost 15 cent increase in taxes there. When we go down to, what's the next line here? Sorry, 34, excuse me, right. And we also just see that we have our, the way the rest of the calculations will flow down. But the significant number is the fact that we are going to be up significantly this year in our taxes. The reasons are the tuitioning and the change in the proportion of Grafton students to Athens students.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or further discussion? Michelle?
Edward, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask this at pre-town meeting, but when you talked about the equalized pupil spending being up, that doesn't include the increased special ed costs that we're responsible for, or does it include that? It doesn't.
Hold on. Well, the number of equalized students is.
Right.
The
The spending per pupil that's up that you mentioned, that doesn't include special ed costs?
Yes, it does.
It does.
It does. These are excess special education costs,
Right.
not the normal special ed costs.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, then let's proceed to vote on Article 5, which is, shall the voters of the Grafton Town School District approve the school board to expend $1,003,669.00, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $16,021.90 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 19.40% higher than the spending for the current year. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Thank you. Now, on to Article 6. Shall the town of Grafton raise $9,000.00 for ambulance service? Is there a motion? And a second? Lisa Kissel. Is there any discussion? Seeing there is none, we'll proceed to a vote on Article 6, which is, shall the town of Grafton raise $9,000.00 for ambulance service? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Article 7. Shall the town of Grafton raise $26,000.00 for the Firefighters Association operating expenses? Is there a motion? So moved. Stan Mack, and a second? Ron Paulette. Is there any discussion? Richard Thompson? Let's wait until you get a mic. Oh, you can come up here if you want, Rich, that's fine.
That's how we're doing it.
Yeah, no, either way. Since you're still able to walk, you can get up.
Yeah, right. As you can see, this year, last year, and I think the year before, we were asking the town for $26,000. That's what we're asking for again this year. The only difference is we're asking the town to pick up the cost of the mutual aid assessment that historically the Grafton Fire has been fundraising for and paying for ourselves. Getting at the point that it's more and more difficult as time goes on, so that's what we're proposing this year, and I hope you support it. Any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any questions? Any comments? Okay, then we'll proceed to a vote on Article 7, which is, shall the town of Grafton raise $26,000.00 for the Firefighters Association operating expenses? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Article 8. Shall the town of Grafton raise $1,500.00 for the Grafton Rescue Squad operating expenses? Is there a motion?
So moved.
I got it.
And a second? Ron Collette again. Is there any discussion? Keith Hermes, there's a mic back there. Keith, thank you.
Do it for me. Thank you, everybody, for your continued support of the Grafton Rescue Squad, both financial and moral. You'll notice this year's budget of $1,500 that's being requested from the town. That is down significantly, but as Rich mentioned, the reason for that drop is that the town has taken over the responsibility for paying the costs of our being dispatched at a separate expense related when you dial 911. That goes to Keene. Those folks need to be paid, and the amount of that is on the order of $6,000–7,000. So we've used our budget to reflect the fact that that money now is being paid out of the town budget. Our expenses have gone up this year, but in deference to the townspeople, we're not asking for an increase to cover that at this time.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, then let's proceed to vote on Article 8. Shall the town of Grafton raise $1,500.00 for Grafton Rescue Squad operating expenses? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Article 9. Shall the town of Grafton raise $8,000.00 to purchase radar speed indicators? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Got it.
And a second?
Second.
I got it.
Stan.
I got it.
Okay, all right. Okay, is there any discussion on this? Alan Sands.
The article is on the warrant as a request of the select board, but don't interpret that as an endorsement of the select board. For the last 6 years, I've heard conversations by a few people in town concerned with speeding and concerned with safety of the community. Once the radar detectors showed up in Chester, the idea was maybe that would work in Grafton as well. So we did a little research. For the amount of money of $8,000, we could purchase 2 of those detectors similar to the ones in Chester, that in red if you're too fast, and green is thank you if you're obliging the speed limit. They would have to be posted or located near current speed sign locations, more than likely one down the Townsend Valley and one as you approach town from the east on 121. It's up to the voters to decide if this is a good idea or not. We've heard people speak in favor that they think that it's a good idea. We've heard people say they don't work. We've heard people say that they're not aesthetically appropriate for Grafton. We've brought the opportunity to you, and it's up to you to discuss it and make a decision.
Okay, thank you. And discussion, Ken Armstrong?
I would ask.
Ken, you want to wait for a mic, please?
No, I think I could. Alan, I'd ask, what is the...
Would you stand, please, Ken?
Sorry, Alan, what is the annual cost of maintaining these?
I don't have a cost for annual maintenance. I watched the ones in Chester. They seem to work very well as long as they're not covered with snow. I haven't observed any maintenance. I don't know. Well, when the snow covers up, they're solar.
So when they're covered up with snow, they don't seem to work. As soon as it melts off, they seem to work again.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have an annual cost for you.
Thanks. Further discussion? Rich Thompson?
Get away from my,
Yep, please.
I think I'd rather see if we're going to try to enforce. I don't think you're going to get any enforcement with these things. I would rather see a certain amount of money, more money being appropriated to the sheriff's department. Maybe double their coverage versus, I think these things, if you want to speed, you're going to speed, no matter how many times it flashes at you. So that's kind of my take on it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Sam Catalino?
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with Rich. Without enforcement, these things are basically useless. They do curtail some people for a while, but after there's no police hiding behind these signs, they become almost useless to that. Except for people who are away. People from away do pay attention to it. But they're not necessarily our speeders. I think most of our speeders, after living in a village for 13 years, are locals. So without enforcement, I'm against this. Thanks.
Thank you. Other discussion? This gentleman behind you, would you stand up, please, and identify
Hi,
yourself?
I'm Gary Jackman. I'm new to the town. I agree with the enforcement issue. Also, it's a deterrent, but it doesn't seem to work, especially if there's long stretches of road that there's no reason for anyone to stop. So, especially over near the fire department and rescue, it would seem better to have put in a stop sign where new people coming into town are forced to slow down and see that there's a stop sign, and it's more prevalent to make people more apparent that they are traveling too fast, opposed to having just a sign flash at you.
Okay, thank you. In the back, Kim?
I also just want to remind everybody also that we do get a slight revenue from the tickets that are issued by the sheriff's department. The sheriff's just about 1,000, and we pay about 4,900 towards the sheriff's department now.
Spoken like a true town treasurer. Are there any other comments? Alan?
I'd just like to remind the group that was brought up at the pre-town meeting, the cost of purchase is a one-time cost of purchase. So if you truly would like to see an increase in the budget for law enforcement, that of course would probably be an annual increase, not a one-time purchase cost.
Okay, thanks again.
Was there any kind of lifespan on these things? Do you know?
Question is there a lifespan on these devices?
I don't have a number, and I've only seen them in Chester for about a year or so.
Okay, David Whittle over here. Could you stand, please?
I have a question for Al. You said there was some research done. Is there any research done in Chester that they do work? And the second follow-up, if I may, there's no sign or anything on 35, which has a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, and sometimes it appears to be a raceway once you get up near our area.
Alan, would you like to respond, please?
I made the comment at pre-town meeting. I look at these things a little bit like locking the door of your house. It keeps the honest people out. I do know when I come through Chester, if I'm thinking about whatever I'm thinking about, and I look up and the thing's flashing red at me, I say, oops, and I slow down. So I know it has some effect on some people. I have not asked them their satisfaction or if they think it's a good deal. They do have one big advantage. They have
You should try it,
multiple
probably.
blue vehicles that say police in black letters, and we don't have that. So they do have some reinforcement to it, so that's a situation we're not in here.
Thank you. Michelle Dufort?
I just have a question for Al or anybody on the select board, because Al, you mentioned that increased law enforcement would be an increased expense for us every year, but we're not locked in to an increased expense. If it doesn't work after a year, couldn't you reduce it to the amount that it is currently? Or are you locked in to an increased amount every year if you go that route?
I believe we could adjust the budget up and down and then receive service according to what we pay. I just wanted to make people aware that when you purchase these radar detectors, it's not an every year cost, just to differentiate so that you're comparing apples and apples, that's all.
Thank you. And down here in front, Lisa Kissel.
Lisa Kissel. So I would also like to add the aspect that these indicators would work possibly in those two particular locations where they're placed. And they're not movable, if I understand. They are put in those two places and stay there. Whereas if we increase our law enforcement budget, then we have added law enforcement throughout the town on other roads. There's, for instance, horrendous speeding going on in Holtonville on 121 West. And at times we have seen some law enforcement on that area, and that has temporarily helped. So more law enforcement would help us throughout the town, and those indicators would work in two spots only.
Thank you. Further discussion? Jason Archambault.
Hello, I drive through Chester twice a day. I go by one of these signs. It does work over there, but about 1/6 of the time they're down. Even with no snow on the solar panel, they're not working. And this is a tourist town. I don't think these signs really fit into the township for having people come visit.
Thank you. Further discussion, questions? Okay, I think probably the best way to proceed would be for another hand vote on this particular issue rather than a voice vote. So if I can have some assistance. Okay, the Article 9 is, shall the town of Grafton raise $8,000.00 to purchase radar speed indicators? Would all those who are in favor please raise your hands? And those who are opposed, also raise your hands. Okay, the results are 5 in favor, 59 opposed. The motion appears to be defeated. The motion is defeated. I might comment that on the Chester end of Route 35, they appear to be controlling traffic by letting the road deteriorate, as opposed to spending more money on radar indicators.
Speed bumps, David.
Article 10. Shall the town of Grafton grant tax exemption to the Grafton Museum of Natural History, the Nature Museum, for their property at 186 Townsend Road. Is there a motion?
Did you get that?
And is a second?
Morley.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Lori, over here, please.
First of all, I'd just like to thank the community of Grafton for the support.
Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm Lori Danforth, and I'm president of the Nature Museum. I'd just like to thank the community of Grafton for the support they've given the Nature Museum for almost 30 years now. And I feel very proud to be the president of that organization. And I feel that it's an important ambassador for Grafton. We are in many towns all over southern Vermont and some of New Hampshire we have people coming from. And that says something about our attitude towards natural history and the environment. And I'd also just like to say that environmental education never pays for itself, and the Nature Museum is definitely a nonprofit.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Edward Bank?
This would obviously be a question for someone on the select board. Is there any precedent for this action? Have we granted this sort of a tax exemption before?
Cynthia, or as a lister, perhaps? Well, whatever, if you can answer.
One.
Yeah, thank you.
No, this is something that we have to do every 5 years by, I guess, state law. So this is the year that it's up, so we have to revote it.
So they currently have this exemption?
Yes. Yes, they do. Oh, okay.
Yes, they do currently
Since
have
they
it.
bought the property.
Okay. Robbie Sprague?
I guess my question is, does this include the new land that you just got to? Okay.
Yes, it does include the new land that they acquired. Any other questions on this article? Okay, let's proceed to a vote then on Article 10. Shall the town of Grafton grant tax exemption to the Grafton Museum of Natural History, the Nature Museum, for their property at 186 Townsend Road? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Okay, Article 11. Shall the town of Grafton raise $9,741.00 for humanitarian expenses as follows? Bellows Falls Senior Center, $674. Grace Cottage, $1,500. Grafton Cares, $1,000. HCRS, $600. Parks Place, $100. RSVP, $160. Senior Solutions, $650. Subca, $650. The Current, $250. Valley Cares, $1,052. Visiting Nurse Association, $2,300. VCIL, $105. Women's Freedom Center, $600, and Youth Services, $100. Is there a motion?
Yes.
Kathy, Sienna. And a second? Joe Polio. Is there any discussion? Lisa Kissel here.
Lisa Kissel, I have a question how these amounts are determined. Are these the amounts that these particular organizations have requested? Or does someone in town or the select board or whatever review requests and just determine these are the amounts we should ask the townspeople to approve? Just curious how this process works.
Kim Record, our town treasurer, town clerk is jumping up and down now, dying to answer this question.
Hi, Kim Record. Yes, every year we request from them to send us a letter of request of the amount that they're asking for. We actually don't have to do that on a yearly basis if they keep the amount the same, but they've kept it always the same. We've always asked for the request. And we do have some reports in the back of the room of what their financial annual reports are at the end. And in the back of your town report also does explain a majority of our humanitarians. And if you can't find the information you're looking for the humanitarians that we do give to, then just ask Michelle or myself and we can give you the contact information. But it is routinely sent in a letter of request.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, then let's proceed to vote on Article 11. Shall the town of Grafton raise $9,741.00 for humanitarian expenses as listed in the article? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The article is passed. Started getting choked up over that one. Article 12. Shall the town of Grafton vote to raise $149,000 for the capital budget? $100,000 for equipment, $4,000 for guardrail, $20,000 for highway roadway projects, $15,000 for fire truck, $3,000 for computers for town offices, $7,000 bridge scraping and painting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Stan Mack, second. Joe Valenti. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing that there is none, let's proceed to vote on the article. Article 12, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The article is passed. Ooh. Article 13. Unlucky Article 13. This and Article 14 are going to require some special attention, as I noted earlier in the meeting. Shall the town of Grafton raise $697,700.00 for the maintenance of highways and bridges? Is there a motion?
We need to amend the motion.
You have to have a motion on the floor before it can be amended. Joe Palio, and is there a second?
Second.
Cynthia?
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion is on the floor. Is there any discussion?
Is it now?
Yes, yes, now would be a good time to amend it.
Okay. I would like to amend it to $527,200. $527,000.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Alan Sands. Is there discussion? Sam Bannick-Bellino, waiting for the mic, please, Sam.
Yeah, I'm Sam Bannick. I have a question on 13. It says maintenance of highways and bridges. It says something there about, maybe I'm the wrong one, about scraping.
Your scraping was in the previous motion. This does refer to maintenance of highways and bridges.
Isn't maintenance of highways?
Point of order, yes, sir.
We have to vote on the amended
We're
now
just-
before we can have any discussion relative to the actual article.
Well, right, the amendment is to change the dollar amount on this. Right, and I think Mr. Banks is correct on that. So let's limit our discussion at this point to the dollar amount, and then we go back to the main motion to discuss the general points of it. Thank you, Edward. So is there any discussion on the dollar amount? Bill Toomey?
Get the dollar amount.
The dollar amount will be changed to $527,200. And that's the amendment that we're dealing with now. Okay. All right, well, let's vote on the amendment, which is to, to change the amount originally shown in the article to $527,200. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. Okay, the ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The amendment is passed. All right, so now we're dealing with Article 13 as amended, which reads, shall the town of Grafton raise $527,200 for the maintenance of highways and bridges? So is there any discussion on this? Sam Battaglino.
Yeah, I have a question on Article 12. It's on there about, no, it's Article 11, I guess. No, 12, I'm confused there.
We're on Article 13.
I know, but it pertains to that. It says maintenance of highways and bridges. But Article 12 also says $7,000 for scraping and painting. Isn't that maintenance?
Cynthia, from the select board?
Well, yes, but this was extra that it takes to build up, to do a bridge. You need about 30,000, so that's the plan in the capital budget to get up to there, and then pick out the bridge that needs scraping and painting. Because we have to hire that special.
Wouldn't that be in the maintenance though in Article 13? Wouldn't that cost be in there? Yeah.
Well, you could put it in there, but the capital budget is set up so that over the years you can raise this money and then you'll have the amount you need at the end of, say, 5 years. It's sort of a 5 years plan, the capital budget is.
So 12 is spending this year, 13%.
Yeah, well, I find that unusual, but if that's the way it's always been done.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the amended motion? Comments? Lori Danforth over here. Gabrielle?
Actually, I have no questions. I just want to say thank you so much to the road crew. I live on the end of Hall Ranch Road, and without their unbelievable maintenance, we would be stuck there for most of the mud season.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on the amended article? Okay, so we'll now vote on the amended article, Article 13, which is, shall the town of Grafton raise $527,200 for the maintenance of highways and bridges? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Now, I know you're waiting with bated breath to move on to another amended article, but perhaps we could, if there's no objection, take a moment to welcome our state legislators, Carolyn Partridge and Matt Cheever, who are here. And again, if there's no objection, allow them to come forward and speak to you and take a couple of questions. Is there any objection to a break in the proceedings to do that? Great, thank you, Carolyn. Matt? You can
Who would you like us to
use either or both.
All right. Thank you so much, Dave, and thank you for allowing us to interrupt the orders of your day. We won't take long. We're happy to take some questions. I want to point out some materials that we brought for you. In the back on the table, you can find our town meeting report, as we usually bring. This lets you know some of the things we've been working on in our committees, and you're welcome to then start your next fire with it. But I would point out this
little square at the back, which gives you our contact information. Also, on the front is the 1-800 number, the toll-free number at the State House. It's 1-800-322-5616. And we really encourage you to reach out to us if you have thoughts, concerns, ideas. We're always available to you. We do have our email addresses here, and I will also encourage you, if you email us and you do not hear back from us, please try again. Sometimes the email spam filters get your message. It's almost impossible to go through those filters every day. We get hundreds of emails. So try again, or try the 800 number. Also, if you do email us, if you could identify yourself, it's very helpful to us. We get a lot of email from out of state, other areas in the state. And sometimes if you include an attachment, it's frowned upon by the IT guys to open up attachments, because we get quite a few emails asking us to open up stuff, and they're probably viruses. So again, don't give up. Please reach out to us. We've also left copies of the Doyle poll in the back, and we have sheets that summarize the ed funding proposal that you've probably heard about in the news. I will not, and I don't think Matt will be able to answer very detailed questions about this. And my experience over the years has been to know a little bit about it. It's meant to do away with property tax and shift the burden of ed funding to income tax, but it's now going on to the Education Committee, a little bit of a reversal in usual process, but it has a long way to go, and I'm going to try not to spend too many brain cells trying to know what this is until we have the final proposal on the floor of the House. But there's some copies of this if you're interested. We really appreciate you taking time with us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the House Agriculture and Forestry Committee is doing. Matt's going to talk about his work on appropriations. Also, he's going to tell you a little bit about the unclaimed property pieces that we have in the back as well. My committee has been working on 4 major things. One has to do with regenerative agriculture, which could potentially draw down carbon from the atmosphere and clean up the lake in terms of phosphorus runoff. We've worked on a pollinator protection bill. We've worked on a rural enterprise development bill, and we've worked on a bill that would require the third-party inspection of amusement rides at our agricultural fairs and field days. So you might think that's already been going on, but it hasn't. At any rate, we feel it's really important, and it's only taken 30 years to figure that out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and then we're happy to take questions afterwards. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Nice to have a different tradition of actually getting to see you all as opposed to getting here after the meeting. This is 2 years running. We've actually gotten here while you're still meeting, so that's nice. So as Carolyn said, I serve on the Appropriations Committee, and the only purpose of that committee essentially is to lock you in a room and make you throw away the key, make you stay in there until the state budget is finished. That is the bill that we work on all year. So luckily, they let us out for town meeting, and next week we anticipate getting the bill out of the House and into the Senate, where they'll ruin it. But we've been working really hard this year on trying to take a realistic approach to the state budget. Vermonters are taxed out. We can't continue to rely on a new tax base, and we need to ensure that the programs that we're actually provide services effectively. They provide the government that Vermonters want, expect, and deserve, and that we're actually having programs that are effective at doing what they need to do. So we've been taking a very hard look at pretty much everything the state does to make sure that it's actually achieving the goals and results that we need it to fund it. I am more than happy to go into tons of detail and bore you all, but you probably do want to finish your meeting at some point. I'm happy to answer any specific questions about the budget or go into more detail with anyone that wants to know more. But I did want to mention that in the back we have 2 copies of the Grafton list for unclaimed property. After the treasurer came in and spoke to us one day, I decided to go to the website, plug my name into the unclaimed property list, and saw that my name was on there. So I filled out the form, and next thing I knew, I had a check coming to me for $93, which was pretty nice. So basically, all the unclaimed property is money that's yours that the state is holding on to for some reason or another. So I'd really encourage you to go through those sheets that are not laid out in any reasonable way. They're not alphabetical, they're not by street address, so you just kind of have to go through and hopefully see your name or friends and neighbors and things like that. But please go through there, because if your name is on there, the state has money that is yours. So with that, I think we'd be happy to answer questions if anyone has any.
Matt, a quick question. Is there a website you can go to find out?
Yes, you can go to the State of Vermont Treasurer Unclaimed Property list, and if you see your name on that list, they would have the forms necessary to get your money back to you.
I would also add, in Athens, we heard from a gal who said she'd gotten a letter from the treasurer's office asking for her social security number. I'd be really wary of that sort of thing. I think if you make the effort, then that's legit. But if somebody says, oh, you got money, unclaimed property, we want your social security number, I would not do that. So just as a heads up. Yes, Sam. Sam.
As long as I got a microphone right here. I heard the governor some weeks ago or something that with the tax state that the state of Vermont is in, talking about either reducing or eliminating taxing on Social Security. I personally think it's a great idea, but with the tax status that the state is in, and now you want to take away another source of taxes. Are roads going to get worse than they currently are? How can that be? If you're going to remove that tax on Social Security, obviously it's got to come from somewhere else. Where?
Except that road money doesn't come from income.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
it's just
aside from that.
Yeah, it's a fair point. So just so you know that under current law, a portion of the Social Security payments are tax-free income based on the income level of the individual. Certain income levels, Social Security payments are tax-free. But you bring up a really good point. Whenever you're talking about tax expenditures, anytime an amount of tax is foregone from some area, it either shifts to everyone else or it comes at a cost of other programs. So that's one of the things that they've been looking at in the Ways and Means Committee. I believe last week was a bit of a blur because everyone was getting ready for town meeting, and with crossover approaching, there were a ton of bills flying around. But I believe that the Ways and Means Committee passed something out to extend that Social Security exemption a little bit higher. And they did that within the boundaries of some of the federal tax changes that came in. So they were paying for it with some of the money that's within the windfall from that. Oh, wait.
I don't know if that applies.
Oh, okay. So Carolyn just handed me a sheet from the Ways and Means Committee that says that taxable Social Security benefits below $45,000 for single filers and below $60,000 for married filers will be 100% exempt from state income tax. So that's the proposal that they have forward at this point.
Cynthia.
is that for?
The size of the town and the road mileage?
It was what, Act 64?
No. It says 2015 legislative fee bill, 3 VSA 2822.
So, Cynthia, I'm not familiar with that exact fee that you're talking about, but what typically happens is, because there's quite a few of them around state government, what typically happens is on a 3-year cycle, every fee gets reviewed. The idea behind fees is there's certain aspects of state government that rather than having the populace pay for, people that utilize that service have to pay for it. And so every 3 years, every fee is on a rotation where the Ways and Means Committee in the House and the Finance Committee in the Senate looks at all those fees and determines what was actually required to do that work. And what they do sometimes is they take the fee and they lower it. Sometimes they say, we actually needed more money and we don't want to go into the general fund for that, so they'll actually raise that fee a little bit. In the past 2 years, there has not been a fee bill. I'm told that next year there probably will be, and I'm not sure where DEC falls on the 3-year rotation for looking at that, but there will be a time when the Agency of Natural Resources, which includes DEC, fees come up, and that would be a great time to sit down and talk about some of the things that you're hearing so that we can get that information to the committee when looking at that fee.
And what is that fee for, Cynthia, exactly?
Yes, everybody's charged it to,
Mind if I?
yeah, you can look at it.
I think the real problem with this thing, I think the real problem with this $2,000 is that the town of Grafton, the town of Athens, Rockingham all have to pay this $2,000, and then at Burlington, they still pay the $2,000. So it's not based on mileage of roads or population, it's just based on either town or city. And I think the whole case of it just seems as though it's a bit unfair that the town of Athens or Grafton or these smaller towns, and then when you got Winooski, Burlington, and all those, they pay the same amount that.
But what is the fee for?
It's a permit. I think it's a permit fee.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was part of Act 64, which is the reinforcing of the road ditches, armoring, and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and bringing up that to the current code.
I'm perfectly happy, and I know Carolyn would be too, to follow up with VLCT because they'll have some information on it. And I think you're absolutely right. That is a little strange to have your smaller municipalities getting burdened with something just as much as the larger cities.
Kim, and then Lisa.
Hi, this is Kim Record. I had a question for the two of you. I realized that minimum wage has gone up to $10.50 as of January the 1st. And there's talk about it possibly moving up to $15 an hour. And I kind of wanted to know what your opinions were on this, where you stand, and if so, how do you feel it's going to impact, say, small municipalities, small businesses in the state of Vermont? Any insight you can give us would be great.
Thanks, Kim.
Do you mind if I go first?
Go
I'm
first.
standing here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is a very interesting issue because I think that if everyone could wave a magic wand, we would say that we'd like to see people make more money. The question is, how do we get there? Because there's quite a few issues related to how to walk the line between helping Vermonters move forward and out of poverty, but at the same time protecting small businesses and making sure that we don't actually do more damage to those people through a benefits cliff issue. What I'm particularly concerned about when it comes to a minimum wage bill is how do we not exacerbate what I refer to as the tale of two Vermonts, which is you've got a whole economic engine going on in the north and northwestern parts of the state, and then you have what's happening everywhere else. And I'm concerned that we may see what has come forward in several other communities or states that have tried this, where they've seen cutback hours for people, They've seen small businesses not being able to compete, and I'm particularly worried about what happens, you know, here and east of here, when essentially at the time that a $15 minimum wage was put in place, it would be double that of our, essentially double that of our neighboring state. So I think all that has to come into play. And I think that the committee is trying, or the legislature's been trying to grapple with that through timing. The way the current minimum wage law is written, we will eventually get to $15 minimum wage because it does increase every year. I think the question is, to what extent can you accelerate that without artificially disadvantaging small businesses, especially in rural areas of the state? So we're looking at it. It's a lot of issues to deal with, but I have concerns while being supportive of making more money for people. Just curious if that's the proper way to do it.
And I agree with what a lot of what Matt said. I'm also very much aware of the concept, and we've heard a lot recently about the concept of affordability. And usually when it's brought up, it's meant to say, well, we need to cut taxes. But there's also an approach to making folks, you know, regular folks, more able to make a living. And the benefits cliff is part of that. If people earn just a little bit more money, they might not have some of the benefits they do now. And what are those ramifications? I think it's important that we know what that would mean. But I think we all have this goal of a strong, healthy Vermont. And the question is, how do we get there? And it might have to be gradual. We might have to take time. But I'm also very aware, as a small business person myself, of this sort of tension. So, Lisa, you had your hand up, and then.
Yeah. Just wondering, and I'll take a really short answer if that's what's available. What is the status of the funding of the cleanup of Lake Champlain? The $20 million annual bill, which we did not know how we're going to pay for the next 20 years.
Well, I think we're still working on that. The treasurer has said that we need to come up with $20 or $25 million a year for our share of the cleanup. And there are those other folks who don't want to really address it. I think it would be helpful to, you know, take it by the horns and figure out how we're going to deal with it. But it's something that we need to do. And I know that it's, for some folks at this end of the state, it's a bit of an issue because we're cleaning up Lake Champlain. But Lake Champlain is a real source of income for the state in terms of recreation and fisher people, and you know, it's one of the jewels of our state, and we are the stewards of our natural resources. So I will also say that there's going to be a day when the guns swivel to the east and the Connecticut River is going to come and say, oh yes, it's moving up the river. The TMDL for nitrogen is moving up the river. And in terms of the Connecticut River, nitrogen is the problem, because when that hits Long Island Sound, there's a huge dead zone. When nitrogen hits salt water, it causes very toxic situations. So we're still working on that funding.
My question is regarding the brain drain and the articles I've read on from Digger, et cetera, is bringing in, you know, new blood, new people to Vermont and bringing them here. What is, it's a great idea, but there seems to be a lack of tech jobs, and tech, which is a lot of the economy in the United States now, into southern Vermont. There's a good amount in Burlington, but not in southern Vermont. What is the state doing to bring these large companies to Vermont?
The governor has started a program called Think Vermont, and I can't tell you all of the details of that, but they are going to make an effort to reach out to young folks in particular to bring them here. I'm the mother of 3 sons. The youngest one just turned 30, which means I must have had him when I was 12. The problem is jobs, and my oldest son, who lives in Fairfax, made it back to Vermont, who works in South Burlington. He is an electrical engineer. My youngest son made it back to Vermont. He works at Okemo and also for the Army Corps of Engineers during the summer. My middle son is a veterinarian, and his wife is also a veterinarian. They would love to move back to Vermont, but my daughter-in-law has a very specialized job, and there's probably one job in the state of Vermont that she could do at UVM, and right now somebody's holding that job. So it is a matter of job. My son is capable of working almost anywhere in small animal veterinary practice. But the problem is jobs and how and by the same token, we know that there are highly skilled jobs that are vacant right now. And the question is, how do we prepare our kids to fill those jobs? Because there are high-paying jobs that are available, and I'm hoping that we can make that connection, and train our kids to fill those jobs.
But a lot of the high-paying jobs are right over the border. They're in Dartmouth, they're in New Hampshire, they're in Massachusetts, they're in Albany.
Mm-hmm.
How, for someone to want to have a high-paying job, you have to have a company that wants to base here.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the technology, we have the infrastructure in terms of fiber, we have that. How do we incentivize and bring these companies even to start satellite offices and start promoting more telecommuting for these areas so that people who want to live in Vermont and have this wonderful lifestyle and wonderful way of living, they have the opportunity to be able to say that I want to come here for that.
So I would just say that I think that's, I'm not an expert about development, marketing, and stuff like that. But I will say that right now, there are businesses with high-paying jobs available, sorry guys, that need employees. There are jobs right now that need to be filled. And the question is how can we make that happen, as well as bring other companies in? I don't have the answers for you, but I'm always willing to listen if you have some great ideas.
Yeah, I'll just follow up real quickly and say the prospect of business incentivification, sorry, that's a tough word to get out in one time, as a competition with other states, Vermont will always lose. What we will win is selling the lifestyle here. And I think that's where the governor's initiative for the Think Vermont move, that I know I'm fighting to get into the budgets that's actually funded, using similar technology to what Amazon does, where you search something on Amazon and for the next 3 weeks you're seeing pictures of that front door that you looked at. The state is looking at doing that type of thing to get some of those telecommuters here. In the past, similar things have been tried, but it was more cold calling or mass mailings of things. This is really targeted at people who have some sort of a connection to Vermont, to try to show them that they could live here and telecommute, bring that population into the rural areas of the state, not just the Burlington area, where you're right, we do have the tech companies up there, and trying to move that portion of the economy forward. it may be slow growth, but unfortunately, we are never going to be in a position where we could compete with a Texas, a New York, a Michigan for trying to incentivize businesses to get them in here. We have to do it in a slightly different way.
Okay, why don't we take one more question and then wrap it up?
I saw Rich and Sally have their hands up, but...
Sally, two more questions.
Some of my question may be more of an urban legend type thing more than anything, but a couple of, for instance, I know firsthand of commercial type businesses that have wanted to expand and everything through Vermont, and they're under the commercial heading. They start the process of going through the Act 250, saying, whoa, they're over the border now. That shouldn't happen. Me personally, I've seen a few things, even in our own small town, what Act 250 does do to some commercial businesses, and I think it really discourages the people to want to move and start even, a smaller type of enterprise if they have to go in and face that such very high bar. Is there anything out there that the legislature is trying to pick up to streamline some of the permitting, to streamline some of the Act 250, and maybe even have some kind of tax incentives, like New York was trying to do, 10 years of, free property tax or whatever. I mean, just some kind of incentives.
Yeah, thanks, Rich, for the question. Yeah, that's a tough one. As Matt said, we have a hard time. I watch Channel 3. I see the CAX ads from New York State. And for us to match that kind of investment that they make in foregone revenue could be very tough for us. I share some of your frustration about Act 250, even though I support the basic tenets. We have just recently taken testimony in my committee, which is Ag and Forestry, from two folks. And the one that really sticks in my mind are a father and his daughter came in to talk about they do kiln-dried firewood, and they're in Pittsford, I believe. And they started out no problem. They went through some Act 250 process, and the latest one that they had to go through, the neighbor who moved in after they had started this business, see, with farming, there's a right to farm, and if you come to the nuisance, you don't have as much power, but they now have this requirement that their trucks, when they leave the yard, they have to go left, even though they really should be going right. And they have to go down the road, find a place to turn around, and then come back through town so that the neighbor doesn't hear them shifting. That's the kind of thing that's very frustrating.
I would say, yeah.
And so we are, as a committee, looking at that. I understand that there's language that's coming over from the Senate that might address some of this, but I hear you.
Sally Warren. How's that? Is that good? Okay. So I'm still Sally Warren. And I disagree with what Matt said, that there's no way for Vermont to outbid New York or Michigan or wherever else. It's because you're only looking at it from the business owner's point of view. If you look at it from the family's point of view and increase your investment in education and increase your investment in early child care so that the families who come here know that there's going to be places to put their kids so the women can work, you're going to be out incentivizing every other state in the union, and we're small and we can do it.
You're absolutely right. That's a very fair point. My comments were not meant to be towards what we can do to incentivize families. I was more commenting on whether we could incentivize big businesses to come here versus Texas or...
Same solution. Good education, services for their families, you got them here.
And we're not, and, you know, I brought up this up. We're not talking, you know, asking Amazon to bring their headquarters here. I'm talking smaller little satellite offices that can hire 10, 20 people. That's not a 10-acre parcel of development. That's an empty commercial building in Springfield that's not being used. That's a building in Bellows Falls that's empty, that could be done.
Absolutely, and you know, I was the lead sponsor of the Family and Medical Leave Insurance Bill for that exact reason. The idea of getting families to come to this state and also allowing our smallest businesses the opportunity to provide a benefit for their employees that other states couldn't, especially New Hampshire. By them not supporting their families, if we support ours and make it easier for businesses to do that here, then we have the upper hand and our businesses have the upper hand. We also...
I think we're getting the hook.
Yeah.
But we really want to thank you all for the time, and please reach out to us if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns. We always welcome your input, so thank you.
Yes, I think that's what the, let's see, I guess our break is over. And I'm glad to hear that Matt has found $93. He can now buy a paddle for the kayak that he bought at the firefighters tag sale that didn't have one. I've been asked to remind people to turn off their cell phones. That apparently is part of the problem that Carolyn was having with her microphone, believe it or not, was some kind of cell phone interruption, stealing the signal or something, aside from any interference with the audience. So, although it's midway in the meeting. However, let's get back to business, which is Article 14. And this is another article that will require amending. And so I shall read it. Article 14. Shall the town of Grafton raise $387,660.00 for the selectmen's budget? Is there a motion? Stan Mack, and a second? Joe Pollio. Is there any discussion?
We need to amend the amount.
Would somebody like to come forward to amend the motion? Stan Mack.
Okay, the amendment, Article 14, which currently reads $387,860, will be amended down, fortunately,
Don't forget you need a
to
second.
$279,480. That's $279,480. The rationale to both of these...
Okay, thank you. We need a second. We need a second for that amendment. Ron Collette. Okay, now we can have discussion. Stan, as the maker of the motion, you're welcome now to comment on the amendment. Or you don't want to comment on the amendment, Stan. Now you can. We have it properly on the floor. Now you can comment on the amendment only.
The only reason why both of these, Article 13 and 14, were being amended is we did not have the revenue figure to go along with those at the time. So all of this works out exactly the same at the end of the budget. It's just that this 387,860 did not have the revenue attached to it. So the 279,480 is only reflecting the revenue that's applied to that article.
In the back, Kim Record.
When Stan talks about the revenue, if you go to page 19 shows exactly the figure that is on the budget, and then it shows the revenue of 108,000. that should have come off of what the actual budget was. So that's where he's talking about the revenue. We do anticipate revenue, we do have a figure for that, it just didn't get figured into the actual article.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments about the amendment? Okay, then we'll proceed to vote on the amendment, which is to change the amount to $279,480. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The amendment is passed. Now, the motion as amended, which is strictly just the amount. Is there any discussion on that? Questions? Answers? Okay, then let's proceed to vote on Article 14 as amended, which is, shall the town of Grafton raise $279,480.00 for the selectmen's budget? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Okay, now on to Article 15. Shall the voters establish a reserve fund to be called the Unanticipated Expenses Fund in an amount not to exceed 10% of the 2018-2019 General and Highway Budget Fund to cover unanticipated revenue shortfalls and pay non-recurring and unanticipated General and Highway Fund expenses in accordance with 24 VSA 2804A. That's a statute. Is there a motion for this? Alan Sands and a second. Joe Polio. Is there any discussion? Okay. Then we shall vote on Article 15, which is, shall the voters establish a reserve fund to be called the Unanticipated Expenses Fund in an amount not to exceed 10% of the 2018-2019 General and Highway Fund budget to cover unanticipated revenue shortfalls and pay non-recurring and unanticipated General and Highway Fund expenses in accordance with State Act 24 VSA 2804A. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes do appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Article 16. Shall the town deposit the sum of $110,000.00 from the 2017-2018 general fund surpluses to fund the unanticipated fund expenses? Is there a motion? Joe Polio in a second. Alan Sands. Is there any discussion? No? Okay, then let's move to vote on Article 16, which is, shall the town deposit the sum of $110,000.00 from the 2017-18 general fund surpluses to fund the unanticipated fund expenses? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Article 17. Shall the town establish a reserve fund to be called the Town Hall Restoration Fund to be used for the restoration of the Town Hall in accordance with State Act 24 VSA 2804. Is there a motion? Joe Polio, a second. Alan Sands. Is there any discussion? Yes, Christopher Shem, he may not be able to run, okay.
When is the last time that an engineer went over the building to see if it was otherwise sound, or are we just going to paint the woodwork?
The question is a little off the field, but we, probably be good to answer that if somebody from the select board can. But did you hear the question, Stan?
That's kind of a tough question. I mean, we haven't had. Let me start back. There's been multiple efforts over the last, 10, 15 years. We know that there's multiple problems with that building. It is starting to deteriorate at a fairly rapid rate. If something isn't done with it relatively soon, the rapid deterioration gets more and more rapid. As far as an engineer going over it, we haven't had anybody look at the entire building as a whole, but if at town meeting we did have a slide presentation that showed a lot of this. And a lot of the structure of the building is fully exposed to the weather. There's clapboards falling off around the backside. There's not even tar paper covering the building. The siding is falling off. The tar paper has been removed or is deteriorating. So we know we have to do something with that building. If you remember back some months ago, we have currently in place a 7-phase project that how we want to accomplish this thing. So we're trying to do it in multiple steps. And right now it's in 7 phases that will be stretched over a period of time. We're not trying to do everything at one time due to expenses. The first thing we're doing now is we're repairing the roof. That's over the town clerk's office. That roof is deteriorating due to ice and snow falling from the top. And to answer your question, at least based on that, because that is what we're doing, we do have an engineer that has looked at that, and we do have a blueprint that is signed and sealed by an engineer, so we can do that new roof properly, which wasn't done on the initial building of that addition, which was done in 1988. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but that's kind of where we sit with it. It's going to be a long.
Thank you for confirming that you have a plan.
We do have a plan, and we're going to try to stick to it.
Great. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Stan. Any other comments or questions?
Can I comment too?
Alan Sands.
I think it's important that you also hear the process that we've gone through so far. We tried to look at what we're doing, putting the roof on, as kind of a small project, and we actually asked a couple contractors to come and look at it and give us some bids. Both of the contractors said if they were working with a landowner or individual and they knew they were going to get the business, they would go and prepare all the research that's necessary. But for them to do a lot of legwork and not know for sure they would get the job, they didn't want to do that, understand. So that forced us to hire an engineer. The guy's name is Bill Badger. Bill Badger, and the question our two contractors were raising is, if we're going to do this roof work, do we know that the foundation and things will support that work? And so Bill Badger has looked at it, and I feel we do have enough information to go forward, feeling that we're not just putting paint on old boards. So I feel we are prepared to go ahead.
We have a blueprint.
We actually have a blueprint the engineer drew up for us, and you're welcome to go to Town Hall and look at the package that he prepared so that when we put it out, the contractors will bid apples to apples so that they're all bidding on the same thing. And Stan has a copy of that, a small copy of that if you'd like to look at it here today.
Okay, thank you, Al. Bill Kearns.
On the town website is the RFP, the bid that went out, as well as the plans. You can look at it on the website under bids and RFPs, I think it is.
Okay, excuse me, any other questions, comments? Okay, let's go ahead and vote on Article 17, then, which is, shall the town establish a reserve fund to be called the Town Hall Restoration Fund to be used for restoration of the town hall in accordance with the State Act 2804. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Article 18. Now we get into the meat on this item, I believe. This article is, shall the town deposit the sum of $100,000 from, excuse me, 2018 general fund surpluses to fund the town hall restoration fund. Is there a motion? Alan and Cynthia seconds. Is there any discussion? Dave Culver over here.
A summary of the $100,000. That's not going to, they'll pay for the roof and some. Okay.
Dave, could you use the mic?
Sorry.
Caitlin, come on back.
Just ask for a summary of what the $100,000 is going to be used for. The roof is not going to cost that much, so.
Okay, somebody can answer that, understand?
Yeah, the $100,000, that's going to apply sort of to the ongoing overall project to this. We do anticipate at some point when we get farther into this thing that it's actually going to be probably more than the $100,000. We anticipate what we're looking at now that the roof in itself is going to be somewhere around we anticipate about $40,000. It's again, that's going to depend on once we get into the project, they take off the old roof and look at the membrane and look at the structure. That's been hammered really badly with these icebergs that have been falling off the upper roof. It's like an 8-foot drop, and you can take a couple of 100 pounds of ice and drop it on the lower roof. It can do a lot of damage. So until we get in and actually see what the existing roof structure looks like, we're looking at somewhere in the vicinity of $40,000 for this roof project. And then we continue on into the next phase, which hopefully will come out and back up just a hair. I don't want to stretch this thing out, but we did go for a historical grant, but the state, in its infinite wisdom, decided that an addition that was put in 1988 didn't quite fit the historical concept of what they were trying to accomplish. So they refused that portion of the grant. And so when it comes up again, we will reapply to the building that was built in late 1700s.
Okay, thank you. Further questions, comments?
Where are you going to get the money to do all this?
Charlie, the question was, where do we get the money to do all this? I think as the article explains, it comes from a surplus from the 2017-2018 year. And that's now the article before us. If there are no other questions, we'll proceed to vote on the article. 18, which is, shall the town deposit the sum of $100,000, 0 cents, from the 2017-2018 general fund surpluses to fund the town hall restoration fund. Would all those in favor please say aye? Aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Article 19. Shall the town establish a reserve fund to be called the Walker Bridge Project Fund to be used for rebuilding and repairs in accordance with State Act 24, paragraph 2804. Is there a motion? Cynthia Gibbs, is there a second? Joe Polio. Is there any discussion? Dave Culver here. Wait for the mic, Dave.
Kind of the same question before is how much is the total expectation of this and what's this going to be covered?
The funding for this comes up in the next article, Dave. This is really just to establish a fund. Whether it gets funded or not remains to be seen. So we'll deal with that in a moment, okay? On establishing the fund itself, is there any other discussion? Okay, so this article is to establish a fund for the Walker Bridge. Article 19, shall the town establish a reserve fund to be called the Walker Bridge Project Fund to be used for rebuilding and repairs in accordance with 24 VSA 2804. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Now, once again, we move on to the meat for that particular item, which is Article 20. Shall the town deposit the sum of $100,000.00 from the 2017-2018 general fund surplus to fund the Walker Bridge Project Fund? Is there a motion? Polio, and second by Stan Mack. Okay, now, is there any discussion on this item? Joe Polio, okay.
There's no way to know the cost of this bridge. There's a meeting on Monday, this coming Monday, in Brattleboro with V-Trans to discuss this bridge. There was a questionnaire that the town had to fill out a couple of months back about how to reroute the traffic and all that stuff, and the select board met with various businesses in towns, fire department, and we sent our questionnaire in. This bridge, we don't know the time frame. It could be 2 years, it could be 3 years, it could be a total rebuild, or it could be a fix. And this is going to be very expensive. This bridge will be probably well over $1 million, maybe even more. And it kind of depends on what they're going to do with it. If it's a total rebuild, then more federal money comes in. If it's not, then there's less federal money, which means we're going to have to come up with a percentage, either 5 or 10% of this cost. So we have the surplus. So the capital budget just is not going to be able to raise enough money, and that would have to come out of taxes. So we have the surplus, so we have the fund, and we're going to put $100,000 in, and we hope that $100,000 will cover the cost, our share of the bridge. If it doesn't, then money has to come from someplace else. If it's less than $100,000, then we will have to take whatever is left, and we will then establish another bridge fund for some other bridge that's going to come down. So the money has to be used for the bridges. It can't be used for something else.
Robbie Sprague, wait for the mic, please.
I'm just curious on these last 3 articles. How did we end up with the 310,000 surplus?
Since I wasn't here when the surplus, I can't really answer that question, but maybe Kim can. I know that we have the surplus, it's been unreserved, and this year the select board decided and voted that we needed to reserve the surplus for various projects, town hall, this one, and establish a reserve fund for unanticipated issues.
Okay, thank you. Our treasurer, Record.
Kim Record. Over the years, ever since we've been audited by Sullivan Powers, Fred Duplessis, it's always recommended to have 10% of our budget held out and use that because of our fiscal year ends June 30th and our first tax payment's not due until August the 15th. So we needed something for the town to work on that bit of time. So we've always had somewhat of a surplus at the bottom or extra, I'd call it. But since the flood of 2011, we were paid back for various labor and material that the town had to redo the repairs. So the federal government, FEMA, had paid us back for our portion of what they used of our resources. And since then, it's slowly just kind of hung there between the $300,000 and the $400,000 range. If you remember last year, we voted to have a tractor. $130,000 for our tractor came out of it because we were just over $400,000. Brought us down to the $360,000. And it's now time to actually designate that money and let the voters decide what we should do with that rather than carrying it as unassigned money every year.
Thank you. Further questions? Over here. Donald?
I might be the only one that doesn't know exactly what the Walker Bridge is, where it is. Just a clarification.
The Walker Bridge. Every bridge in town has a name.
The Walker Bridge is at the intersection of 121 and Fisher Hill.
Near the base of Fisher Hill. Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, then let's proceed to vote on Article 20, which is, shall the town deposit the sum of $100,000.00 from the 2017-2018 general fund surpluses to fund the Walker Bridge Project Fund? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Article 21. Shall the town establish a reserve fund to be called the Highway Retreatment Fund to be used for highway retreatment in accordance with 24 VSA 2804. Is there a motion? Alan Sands, and a second. Joe Polio. Any discussion, questions? Yes, this gentleman back here. Gabriella, thank you.
Hi, Craig Ruggles. Can you clarify the definition of retreatment for
what is retreatment?
Retreatment is when you take a paved road and you either rehabilitate it by digging up the pavement, putting gravel base, or just paving over it, as we did on Townsend Road this past year and in town.
Any other questions? Over here, Deborah Toomey, excuse me.
I understand that we're putting in a reserve fund. The issue I'm trying to grapple with here is that we already voted money for treatment in Article 13.
Very good question. We put in the budget every year, in the last couple of years, $105,000 for retreatment. If anybody could remember back in the 1st of October, during the busiest season, they were paving Main Street. And that was a result of, it was a very, very small project. It was only, I don't know, a few $1,000s. And because it's such a small project, we're on the bottom of the list, and we get put off. The other problem is that you spend this $106,000, and what you do a Band-Aid to the highways. You put some blacktop on, it's nice and smooth for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden the road goes to heck. So if we don't spend the money, then it's gone. So we have decided to have a reserve fund, and the plan is not to spend the $106,000 this year. If it's been raised, budget has been passed, so we have that to do. And so that every year we will accumulate a large sum, and we can do a real project. And I don't know, people might remember the Jock Hill corner on Route 21 where the town rebuilt that. Well, see, they built that correctly. We did it with our own people, we put the new bed in, and the road is holding up. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to get enough money, and so when we attack whatever the bad roads are, we will have the funding. That's the basic of it. And rather than just having the money to spend it, it's going to be reserved.
Okay, over here, Lisa Kissel, please. Thank you, John.
So the previous three reserve funds have been funded from the surplus, but there's no indication here how is this particular reserve fund to be funded.
This money comes out of the budget, the budget you just approved, for paving, $106,000. We will not spend that money this year unless we are forced to. And then at the end of the year, that money, instead of just going away, gets moved to a fund that was established.
I think Kim Record, our treasurer, wants to clarify that.
If you look on the article where we voted for the highway budget, retreatment is already within that. So the prior 7 pages before, okay, I think it's page where the general budget is, and it breaks down every line item. And under the highway, there should be a line item that says retreatment, and it has $106,000 built into it. So you're going to be taxed already using the highway budget amount. So what's going to happen if we don't do any paving in that 106 that we didn't use because we didn't pay, and we paid our tax dollars, we want to take and just appropriate it and move it over to the reserve. So it's not an extra tax dollar, it's not coming from the surplus, it's actually coming from what you already approved for the budget. We're just moving it to the reserve, so it's always going to stay there and it's going to accumulate over the years until the voters tell us otherwise. And the only thing that reserve can be used for is for paving and retreatment. There's no way out of it unless we come to the voters first. So we just want to, like Joe said, we want to build it over the years to make it a better project when we do get to it.
And to clarify that, if there is an emergency and we have to repair a road for, say, $20,000, we'll use that $106,000 out of the budget to do the repair, and whatever is left will go into this reserve fund. It's not that we're just going to, we can spend it if we need it, but if we don't need it, then at the end of the year, we move it to the reserve fund.
Okay, we have another question back here.
Hi, in this discussion, I keep hearing repaving. Is this fund specifically reserved for paved roads or all roads?
Just paved roads.
Just paved roads.
Okay, thank you. Further questions on creating this non-funded fund? Okay, so Article 21. Shall the town establish a reserve fund to be called the Highway Retreatment Fund to be used for highway retreatment in accordance with 24 VSA 2804? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Okay, Article 22. Very simple. Shall the town of Grafton pay its property taxes to the treasurer in quarterly installments, with the due dates being August 15, November 15, February 15, and May 15? Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Kim. And a second from Linda Robertson. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, then the article is, shall the town of Grafton pay its property taxes to the treasurer in quarterly installments, with the due dates being August 15, November 15, February 15, and May 15? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. Article 23. Shall the town of Grafton levy an interest charge on all delinquent taxes on real and personal property for 1% per month or fraction thereof from the due date of each installment for the first 3 months, and 1.5% per month or fraction thereof for every month thereafter, as provided for in 32 VSA 5136. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Joe Polio, and a second. Kim Record. Any discussion on this? Okay, then we shall proceed to vote on Article 23. Shall the town of Grafton levy an interest charge on all delinquent taxes on real and personal property of 1% per month or fraction thereof from the due date of each installment for the first 3 months, and 1.5% per month or fraction thereof for every month thereafter, as provided for in 32 VSA 5136. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is passed. That concludes the portion of the meeting reserved for the warned articles. Now, is there any other non-binding business that may legally, that we can legally transact to come before us? Joe Polio.
I'd like to just thank the select board and the town. I'd like to thank Walter for his service as constable. He's retiring this year. He served as constable for 20 years.
About.
And he's had enough.
Maybe I'll run for select board.
We're going to miss him. But,
thanks for the warning.
But anyway, thank you for your great service.
Thank you.
Also,
right now, but you go knock on their doors and check about their dogs.
Also, I'd like to thank Ron Paulette for his service on the select board. It's been a pleasure working with Ron. He's brought a great insight to the board. I encourage them to continue, but he has other interests and other obligations, but I wish he would have. He's a real asset.
And wanted at least one contested election.
Anyway, so I'd like to thank Ron for his service. Also, I'd like to make an announcement. There's a solar project that is coming down the pike at Unified Data. They're going to put in a solar array there next to the building. There's a public meeting will be held here at the school on March 14th. If anybody would, excuse me?
At the town garage.
Oh, town garage at the 14th, March 14th. If anybody would like to learn about the project. 6 o'clock, 6 p.m.
Okay, and I believe the Grange should have their lunch ready about now across the hall. People will stay and have lunch and socialize a little bit. Again, I want to thank Gabriella and Caitlin for their help today. It's been kept us moving along. And unless there's anything else anyone wishes to bring up, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Alan Sands, a second. No one wants to second?
Somebody different.
Michelle Dufort?
Thank you.
I just having so much fun today. Well, this is a new record for us. We've been here for more than an hour this year. And I'll accept your vote in favor of this motion by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? Okay, the 235th meeting is adjourned. Thank you.